Ji-woo stood in the center of the massive chamber, her wrists bound in energy cuffs that hummed with each small movement. The ceiling stretched so high above her that she could barely see it. Around her, in a wide circle, sat the members of the Galactic Council. 6 different alien species, each representing their own empire or federation, each one looking down at her like she was something dangerous that needed to be removed. She kept her back straight and her face calm. They wanted her to beg. They wanted her to cry, or scream, or show fear. She would give them nothing. The lead council member, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms, spoke in a voice that echoed through the chamber. Ji-woo of Earth, you have been found guilty of war crimes against the Voth Empire. You attacked their peacekeeping forces. You killed 17 of their soldiers. You refused their lawful annexation of the human colony on Proxima 9. Ji-woo bit back the words that wanted to come out. Peacekeeping forces. They made it sound so clean. They did not mention the families that the Voth tried to relocate by force. They did not mention the children who watched their parents dragged away. They did not mention that her unit only fought back after the Voth opened fire first. But none of that mattered now. She had already given her testimony. The council had already made their decision before the trial even started. This was just theater. Do you have anything to say before we pass sentence? The blue alien asked. Ji-woo looked up at the council. Her eyes found Vexlar, the Voth ambassador. He sat in his seat with a small smile on his face. This was his victory. He had pushed for this trial. He had called in favors and made deals to make sure she would be found guilty. Humans were becoming too strong in the outer sectors, too independent, too hard to control. Making an example of her would remind other humans what happened when they resisted. I protected my people, Ji-woo said quietly. I would do it again. The blue alien nodded as if he expected this answer. Then we have reached our decision. Ji-woo of Earth, you are sentenced to exile on Kratos 7. You will be given basic survival supplies and transported there immediately. There will be no rescue, no communication, no return. No return. The chamber was silent. Even the other council members seemed uncomfortable. Everyone knew what Kratos 7 was. It was not really exile. It was execution, with extra steps. Kratos 7 was a Class X Deathworld, the most dangerous classification in the known galaxy. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was toxic. The weather could kill you in minutes. And the creatures that lived there were the most aggressive predators anyone had ever documented. The longest anyone had survived on Kratos 7 was 6 days. Most died within 48 hours. You cannot do this. A voice called out from the observation area. Ji-woo turned her head and saw Captain Tae-hyun standing up. He was her commanding officer. The man who had trained her. The man who had fought beside her for 5 years. This is murder. You are killing her and calling it justice. Captain Tae-hyun, the blue alien said coldly. You are here as a witness only. Speak again, and you will be removed. Tae-hyun's hands were shaking. Ji-woo could see him struggling with himself. He wanted to do something. Wanted to fight. But there were 50 armed guards in the room, and hundreds more outside. If he tried anything, he would die. And it would not change her fate. Ji-woo looked at him and shook her head slightly. Stay alive, she tried to tell him with her eyes. Tell them what happened here. Make sure people know. Tae-hyun sat down slowly, but his jaw was tight with anger. Take her to the transport ship. The blue alien ordered. Guards moved forward and grabbed Ji-woo's arms. They marched her out of the chamber and down a long hallway. She memorized every turn, every door, every window. Habits from her military training. Always know your environment. Always look for exits, even though she knew it was useless now. They brought her to a small ship in the docking bay. Inside was a single drop pod, barely large enough for one person. Next to it sat a supply pack. One of the guards picked it up and showed her the contents. A water purifier that would last maybe 3 days. Basic medical supplies, a knife, a fire starter, a thermal blanket. This is everything you get, the guard said. He was not cruel about it. Just matter of fact. The pod will take you down to the surface. After that, you are on your own. Ji-woo nodded. She climbed into the pod and sat down. The guard sealed the door from the outside. Through the small window, she watched them return to the ship. Then, the ship began to move. The journey to Kratos 7 took 6 hours. Ji-woo spent the time going through the supply pack again and again, making plans. The knife was cheap but sharp. The fire starter worked. The water purifier could be extended if she was careful. The thermal blanket could be torn into strips for rope or bandages. She had survived worse than this. At least, she told herself that. But she knew it was a lie. She had never faced anything like a Class X Deathworld. Through the pod window, she finally saw it. Kratos 7 looked angry. The planet was covered in dark red jungles and black mountains. Massive storm systems swirled across the surface. As the pod got closer, she saw movement in the jungle canopy. Something huge was moving down there. Something the size of a building. The pod separated from the ship with a violent jerk. Then she was falling. The pod shook and rattled as it entered the atmosphere. Heat poured through the walls. Ji-woo gripped the harness straps and kept her breathing steady. Fear would not help her. Panic would not save her. The pod crashed through layers of clouds. She saw the jungle rushing up to meet her. Trees that were hundreds of feet tall. Strange plants that glowed with bioluminescence even in the daylight. And creatures. Everywhere, she saw creatures moving. The pod hit the ground hard. Ji-woo's teeth rattled in her skull. The harness dug into her shoulders. Then, everything was still. For a moment, she just sat there, breathing. She was alive. That was step 1. The pod door hissed open. Hot, humid air rushed in. It smelled like rot and sulfur, and something else she could not identify. The gravity hit her immediately. She felt like someone had put weights on every part of her body. Moving was harder. Breathing was harder. Ji-woo grabbed the supply pack and climbed out of the pod. Her boots sank into soft, dark soil. The jungle surrounded her on all sides. The trees were so tall and thick that they blocked out most of the light. Strange sounds echoed from every direction. Roars, screams, something that sounded like metal scraping against metal. In the distance, something howled. It was answered by another howl, from a different direction. Then another. Then another. They knew she was here. Ji-woo pulled out her knife and looked around the small clearing where the pod had landed. She had maybe an hour before dark, maybe less. She needed shelter. She needed water. She needed to understand what was hunting her. She took a deep breath of the thick air and started moving. The Galactic Council had sent her here to die. They thought a human could not survive on a death world. They forgot that humans came from one. This was just going home. The first night on Kratos 7 felt like it would never end. Ji-woo found a cluster of rocks near the crashed pod and used her thermal blanket to create a lean-to shelter. It was poor protection, but it was something. She did not light a fire. Fire would tell every predator in the area exactly where she was. Instead, she sat in the darkness and listened. The jungle was never quiet. She heard things moving through the trees above her. Heavy footsteps in the distance. The crack of branches breaking. The wet sound of something eating something else. She counted 17 different animal calls in the first hour alone. Each one was a threat she did not yet understand. When the sun finally rose, Ji-woo was exhausted but alive. That put her ahead of most exiles. She spent the morning exploring the area around the pod. The crash had created a small clearing, maybe 30 feet across. Beyond that, the jungle was so thick she could barely see 10 feet in any direction. She found water running down the side of a rock formation. When she tested it with her purifier, the device beeped red. poisonous. The water here could kill her as easily as the predators. But Jiwoo had been trained by the best. Her instructor back on Earth, a woman named Bo Young, had taught her that every environment had resources if you knew where to look. Nature wants to kill you, Bo Young used to say. But it also wants to survive. Find the things that survive. Learn from them. Jiwoo studied the plants around the water source. Some of them were drinking the water and living. She marked those plants in her mind. If they could process the toxins, maybe she could use them. She cut samples and stored them in her pack. On the second day, she saw her first predator up close. It came out of the jungle without warning. One moment Jiwoo was checking her shelter. The next moment, a creature stood at the edge of the clearing, watching her. It was massive. 6 legs, each one thick with muscle. Its body was covered in scales that looked like dark metal. When it moved, the scales clicked together with a sound like knives. Its head was long and flat, with too many eyes and a mouth full of teeth designed for tearing. This was a Vorash. Jiwoo had seen pictures of them in the briefing files about Kratos 7. They were ambush predators. Fast, strong, aggressive. They could rip through steel with their claws. The Vorash tilted its head, studying her. Jiwoo kept perfectly still. Her hand slowly moved to her knife. It would do nothing against this creature, but it was all she had. The Vorash took a step into the clearing. Then another. It was testing her, seeing if she would run. Predators loved it when prey ran. Jiwoo did not run. Instead, she grabbed the fire starter from her pack and sparked it. The flame caught on some dry material she had prepared. Fire burst to life in her hands. She stood up and shouted at the Vorash. Her voice echoed across the clearing. The Vorash stopped. It had never seen fire before. Its many eyes focused on the flames. Jiwoo waved the burning material and took a step forward. The Vorash took a step back. They stood like that for several seconds. Woman and monster. Then the Vorash turned and disappeared back into the jungle. Jiwoo's hands were shaking. She had just faced down an apex predator with nothing but fire and noise. It had worked. But it would not work forever. Over the next week, Jiwoo began to understand Kratos 7. The planet operated on a simple rule. Everything was food for something bigger. There was a hierarchy. Jiwoo began to 7. Jiwoo began to understand. Jiwoo began to understand. Jiwoo began to understand. Jiwoo began to understand. The small creatures feared the medium creatures. The medium creatures feared the large creatures. And the large creatures feared whatever was at the top. The Vorash came back twice more. Each time, Jiwoo used fire and loud noises to drive it away. She was teaching it that she was dangerous. That attacking her would cost energy and might cause injury. In a world where everything was trying to kill everything else, creatures learned to pick easier targets. She also found food. The insect-like creatures that crawled on the tree bark were edible if cooked thoroughly. She discovered fungi growing in dark places that, when processed correctly, released clean water. She learned which plants were poisonous and which could be used as medicine. On day 10, she found the caves. They were hidden behind a waterfall about half a mile from the pod crash site. The entrance was narrow, but inside, the cave system opened up into several large chambers. The walls were dry, the temperature was stable, and most importantly, there was only one way in. Jiwoo spent 2 days moving her supplies to the caves. She set up traps around the entrance, using sharpened sticks and tripwires made from plant fibers. She created a fire pit in the main chamber, where the smoke would vent through cracks in the ceiling. She organized her supplies and started building weapons. Better weapons than her small knife. She used bones from creatures she found dead in the jungle. She used the metal scales from a dead Vorash she discovered. She used vines and rocks and anything else she could find. Slowly, her collection grew. A spear with a bone tip, a club weighted with stones, a sling for throwing rocks at range. Bo Young's voice echoed in her mind as she worked. You are a human. You are not the strongest. You are not the fastest. You are not the most dangerous. But you are the most adaptable. You survive because you learn. You survive because you never give up. On day 15, Ji-woo faced her second real test. She was checking her traps near the cave when she heard them. A pack of hunters moving through the jungle. These were not Vorash. These were something else. Smaller, but faster. Moving together with coordination. She ran for the cave, but they were already cutting off her escape. 6 of them burst from the jungle. They looked like reptiles mixed with insects. Long bodies covered in chitinous armor. Multiple legs. Heads with mandibles that opened sideways. Their eyes were intelligent. They spread out, surrounding her. These were Raxkor, pack hunters. They worked together to take down prey much larger than themselves. Ji-woo backed toward the cave entrance. The Raxkor moved with her, keeping their circle tight. One of them made a clicking sound. The others responded. They were communicating, planning. The first one attacked from her left side. Ji-woo was ready. She had been watching them, seeing which one was most aggressive. She swung her club and caught it in the head. The creature's armor cracked. It fell back, hissing. The others rushed forward together. Ji-woo used the narrow cave entrance to her advantage. They could only come at her 2 at a time. She used her spear to keep them at distance. When one got too close, she stabbed. When another tried to circle, she threw rocks with her sling. The fight lasted 10 minutes. It felt like hours. By the end, 2 Raxkor were dead. 3 were wounded and retreating. 1 had escaped without injury. Ji-woo had cuts on her arms and a deep bruise on her leg, but she was alive. She dragged the dead Raxkor into the jungle, far from her cave. Let other predators come for them. Let them think twice about entering her territory. That night, Ji-woo sat by her fire and cleaned her wounds. Her body hurt. She was tired, but she was also proud. She had defended her territory. She had won. Outside the cave, something roared in the distance. It was a sound she had not heard before. Deeper than the Vorash. Louder than the Raxkor. It made the ground vibrate. Whatever was at the top of the food chain, she had not met it yet. But she would be ready when she did. 47 days. Ji-woo marked the 47th line on the cave wall with a piece of charcoal. 47 days, since the council had dropped her on this planet to die. She was still breathing, still fighting, still here. She had learned so much since those first terrifying nights. The jungle's patterns, the hunting schedules of different predators, the safest paths to water, the best trees for gathering food. She had expanded her territory, marking it with the skulls of creatures she had killed. Other predators were learning to avoid her area. She was no longer just surviving. She was living. But something had changed in the last few days. The jungle felt different. The usual sounds were quieter. The Vorash that sometimes prowled near her territory had not been seen in a week. Even the Raxkor packs were avoiding the area. The smaller creatures were hiding. Everything was afraid. Ji-woo stood at the entrance to her cave and watched the jungle. Her instincts, sharpened by weeks of constant danger, told her something was coming. Something bigger than anything she had faced before. She saw it for the first time on day 48. She was checking her water collection system when she felt the ground shake. Not like an earthquake, more rhythmic. Like footsteps, very large footsteps. Ji-woo climbed up to a high point near her cave and looked out over the jungle canopy. At first, she saw nothing. Then, the trees moved. Something massive was pushing through them like they were grass. It emerged into a clearing about 300 yards from her position. Ji-woo's breath caught in her throat. The creature stood 20 feet tall. Its body was covered in thick, armored plates that overlapped like the scales of a pangolin, but much larger. Each plate looked like it could stop a bullet. Its head was enormous, with intelligent eyes that scanned the area with purpose. It walked on 4 legs, each one ending in claws that dug deep furrows in the ground. A long tail swept behind it, knocking down smaller trees. This was a kovan, the apex predator of this region, the thing that all other predators feared. Jiwoo watched as the kovan moved through the clearing. It was not hunting, it was patrolling, checking its territory. She could see old scars on its armor plates. This creature had been fighting and winning battles for years, maybe decades. The kovan paused and lifted its head. For a moment, Jiwoo thought it was looking right at her. Then, it continued moving, disappearing back into the jungle. She climbed down from her perch, her mind racing. That creature had been nowhere near her cave. It was not an immediate threat, but she knew how territories worked. Eventually, they would meet. The kovan would see her as a competitor or as prey. Either way, it would come for her. She had maybe a week, maybe less. Jiwoo spent the next 3 days preparing. She could not fight the kovan directly. That would be suicide. But she could be smart. She could use the environment. She could use everything she had learned about this planet. She found a ravine about half a mile from her cave. The sides were steep and rocky. The bottom was narrow. It was perfect. She spent hours setting up her trap, using every resource she had, sharpened stakes hidden under leaves, vines positioned to trip, piles of rocks balanced on the ravine's edge, and most importantly, she found a nest of creatures that released a burning toxin when threatened. She carefully relocated several of them to the ravine. On day 51, the kovan entered her territory. Jiwoo saw it from her lookout point. It walked directly toward her cave, pushing through the jungle with ease. It had caught her scent. It knew something was here. Something that did not belong. She grabbed her spear and ran. Not away from the kovan. Toward it. She had to lead it to the trap. When she was close enough, she shouted. She threw rocks. She made herself visible. The kovan's head snapped toward her. Those intelligent eyes focused on her small human form. It made a sound like grinding stone. Then it charged. Jiwoo ran. The heavy footsteps shook the ground behind her. Trees crashed as the kovan plowed through them. She ran as fast as the crushing gravity would allow, her lungs burning, her legs screaming. She had mapped this route 100 times. She knew every turn, every obstacle. The kovan was gaining on her. She could hear its breathing, feel the heat coming off its massive body. She reached the ravine and jumped. Her hands caught a vine she had positioned earlier. She swung across the gap and landed on the other side. The kovan was too big and moving too fast. It tried to stop, but momentum carried it forward. The creature crashed into the ravine with a sound like thunder. The stakes at the bottom pierced its armor in the few weak spots between plates. The toxin-releasing creatures swarmed over it, burning its eyes and mouth. Rocks fell from above, striking its head, but the kovan did not die. It roared with rage and pain, thrashing in the narrow space. Its armor protected it from the worst of the damage. Jiwoo watched from the edge. Her trap had worked, but not well enough. The creature was wounded, but still dangerous. Still capable of escaping and hunting her down. She had one more option. One more tool. She climbed down into the ravine, moving carefully around the wounded kovan. The creature saw her and tried to strike with its tail. Jiwoo dodged. She was faster than it now. Smaller. More mobile. She found the spot where a stake had penetrated between armor plates. She took her spear and widened the wound. Not to kill. To hurt enough that the kovan would have to listen. "Stop," she said quietly. She did not know if the creature understood words, but her tone carried meaning. "Stop fighting." The kovan thrashed once more, but weaker this time. It was exhausted. Wounded. Trapped. Jiwoo climbed onto its back, staying away from its jaws. She found the parasites that were attached to its armor in places it could not reach. Large, tick-like creatures that were drinking its blood. She began removing them, crushing them one by one. The Kovan went still, confused. She found wounds that were infected. She used the medicine she had made from jungle plants and applied it. She brought water and poured it near the Kovan's mouth. The creature drank. For 3 hours, Jiwoo worked. She treated what wounds she could. She removed parasites. She showed that she was not just a threat. She was useful. Finally, she climbed down and cut away the vines that were holding the Kovan's legs. She gave it away to escape. The Kovan stood slowly, testing its injuries. It looked down at Jiwoo. She stood her ground, spear ready, but not pointed at the creature. They stared at each other. Then the Kovan did something Jiwoo did not expect. It lowered its massive head until it nearly touched the ground. The gesture was clear. Submission. Respect. Jiwoo had not killed the apex predator. She had done something far more impressive. She had beaten it, trapped it, and then shown mercy. In the language of Kratos, 7, that made her the new apex. The Kovan turned and walked away slowly. But it did not go far. It stayed at the edge of Jiwoo's territory, watching, waiting. She had a guardian now, and the rest of the predators in the jungle would know it. Jiwoo walked back to her cave as the sun set. Her whole body ached, but she was smiling. She was no longer prey. She was no longer just a survivor. She was the alpha. The Kovan stayed. Jiwoo had expected it to leave after a few days, but the massive creature remained at the edge of her territory. It did not enter her cave or interfere with her daily routine. It simply stayed close, watching over the area like a living fortress. Other predators noticed immediately. A Vorash that had been testing her boundaries for weeks took one look at the Kovan and fled. A pack of Raxkor that approached in the night scattered before they even reached the clearing. Word spread through the jungle in whatever way predators communicated. This territory belonged to something dangerous, something to avoid. Jiwoo used the peace to expand her operations. With the Kovan's presence keeping away the most dangerous threats, she could venture farther from her cave. She found new food sources, better water, plants that could be used for making rope and tools. She even discovered a grove of fruit-bearing trees that were safe to eat. She was thriving. On day 70, something unexpected happened. Another Kovan appeared. Jiwoo saw it from her lookout point. This one was smaller than her guardian. Younger, perhaps. It approached cautiously, making low rumbling sounds. Her Kovan responded with similar sounds. They were communicating. The younger Kovan circled at a distance, watching Jiwoo. She stood still, letting it observe. After an hour, the younger one approached and performed the same gesture her guardian had done weeks ago. It lowered its head to the ground. She had a second guardian. Over the next month, more creatures came. Not all of them were Kovans. Some were Vorash that had been displaced from their territories by larger predators. Some were creatures she did not have names for. Each one approached carefully. Each one observed her. And each one, in their own way, showed submission. Jiwoo realized what was happening. She had defeated the apex predator. In the logic of Kratos 7, that made her the new leader of the region. These creatures were not her pets. They were not tame, but they recognized her as the top of the hierarchy. They stayed near her because her territory was safe, because she provided protection through her presence. She had accidentally built a pack. By day 120, Jiwoo's territory had expanded to cover several square miles. She had established multiple water sources and food caches. She had built several shelters in strategic locations. Her pack numbered 15 creatures, including 3 Kovans, 4 Vorash, and several smaller, but still deadly predators. She used her pack strategically. The Kovans could take down the largest prey. The Vorash were fast and good for scouting. She learned to read their behaviors and use them to gather information about the jungle. When the Vorash became agitated, she knew something dangerous was approaching. When the Kovans gathered together, she knew a storm was coming. She was no longer just surviving. She was building something. A kingdom. In the most hostile place in the galaxy. But far above the planet, in the cold darkness of space, her success was causing problems. The monitoring satellite that the Galactic Council had placed in orbit had been recording data the entire time. Every day, it sent reports back to Council headquarters. Those reports showed an anomaly. The Exile was still alive. Not just alive, but her life signs were strong, stable. She had survived 156 days on a planet where the record was 6 days. Ambassador Vexlar stared at the reports in his office, his face twisted with anger. This was not possible. Humans were dangerous, yes, but they were not supposed to be able to survive a Class X Deathworld. If word got out that Jiwoo had lived this long, it would undermine everything the Council had worked for. The other species would ask questions. They would wonder why humans were considered so dangerous if they could thrive where others could not. They would start to fear humans even more. Or worse, they would start to respect them. Vexlar called an emergency session of the Council. "We have a problem," he told the gathered members. "The human exile is still alive." The blue-skinned council leader looked at the data. 156 days. "How is this possible?" "It does not matter how," Vexlar said. "What matters is that she cannot be allowed to survive. If she is eventually rescued, she will become a symbol. Humans will rally around her. They will use her as proof that they are superior." "What do you suggest?" another council member asked. "We send a cleanup team. We eliminate her and destroy all evidence of her survival. We say she died on day 2 like we expected." The blue-skinned leader hesitated. "That is extreme." "So is allowing a human to survive where no other species could," Vexlar said coldly. "We made our decision when we sent her there. We must commit to it." After hours of debate, the council voted. A cleanup team would be sent. The Drawl Syndicate, a group of mercenaries known for their efficiency and discretion, would handle it. 6 mercenaries were hired. Their leader was Kethra, a scarred veteran who had fought in a dozen wars. He was given the mission details and told to use any methods necessary. "1 human on a death world," Kethra said when he read the briefing. "Should be easy." His team landed on Kratos 7 on day 162. They were equipped with advanced armor, energy weapons, and scanners. They had faced pirates and soldiers and rebels. They were professionals. They expected to find a desperate, starving human hiding in some cave, barely clinging to life. Instead, they found something else entirely. Their scanners picked up Jiwoo's location quickly, but the readings made no sense. The scanners showed multiple large life forms surrounding the human, dozens of predators in a small area, but they were not attacking. They were just there. Stationary. "Equipment malfunction?" one mercenary suggested. "All our scanners show the same thing," Kethra said. He frowned. They approached through the jungle, weapons ready. As they got closer, they started seeing signs. Trails that had been deliberately cleared. Markers made from stones and bones. This was not random. This was organized. Then they saw the territory boundary. Skulls mounted on stakes in a wide circle. The skulls belonged to creatures that could tear apart armored vehicles. There were dozens of them. Then, wide-side, the skulls mounted on report. The skulls mounted on stakes. "What the hell is this?" one of the mercenaries whispered. They crossed the boundary. Immediately, everything went wrong. From the jungle, a Kovan charged. Then another. The mercenaries opened fire, but their weapons barely scratched the creature's armor. Vorash attacked from the sides, moving faster than the mercenaries could track. Smaller predators swarmed from every direction. The mercenaries fought back, but they were not prepared for this. This was not a dying human. This was an organized pack, working together with perfect coordination. And at the center of it all was Ji-woo. She stood on a rock outcropping, watching the battle. She did not join the fight. She did not need to. Her pack was doing the work for her. She had become what the council feared most. She had become the queen of a death world. Kethra saw her and understood immediately. This was not going to be easy. This was not going to be quick. He ordered his team to retreat. As they ran back to their ship, Ji-woo watched them go. She knew what this meant. The council knew she was alive. They had sent people to kill her. That meant she was a threat. She smiled. Good. Kethra and his team made it back to their ship, but barely. 3 mercenaries were wounded. 1 had lost his weapon. All of them were shaken. They had been ambushed by creatures that should not be working together. Led by a human who should have been dead months ago. New plan, Kethra said as his team tended their wounds. She has turned the local predators into a weapon. We cannot approach directly. Well, we could use the ship's weapons, one mercenary suggested. Orbital strike. Turn that entire territory into glass. Kethra considered it. The council had given them authorization to use any methods necessary. An orbital strike would certainly solve the problem. But it would also leave evidence. Satellite images. Heat signatures. Questions. No, he decided. We do this quietly. We hunt her the right way. Over the next 2 days, the mercenaries studied Ji-woo's patterns. They used drones and long-range scanners. They watched her territory from a distance. They learned when she was most vulnerable, when the pack was spread out, when she was alone. But Ji-woo was watching them too. She had seen where their ship landed. She had tracked their drones with help from her Vorash, whose senses were sharper than any scanner. She knew they would come again. And this time, she would be ready. On the 3rd day, Kethra made his move. His team split up and approached from multiple directions. They used sound dampeners to hide their footsteps. They used scent blockers to hide from the predators. They moved during the time when Ji-woo's pack was spread out hunting. They almost reached her cave before the trap sprung. The jungle itself seemed to attack them. Vines dropped from above, tangling their legs. Hidden pits opened beneath their feet. Creatures that Ji-woo had specifically positioned launched ambushes from unexpected angles. The mercenaries found themselves fighting on terrain that Ji-woo had spent months preparing. She had turned her entire territory into a weapon. One by one, the mercenaries fell. Not dead, but wounded. Disarmed. Separated from their team. Ji-woo had learned from her battles with the Roxcore and the Kovan. She used the environment. She used surprise. She used fear. Kethra found himself alone, his team scattered. His armor was damaged. His weapon was almost out of charge. And standing in front of him, on a fallen log, was Ji-woo. She looked different from her trial photos. Thinner but harder. Her clothes were a mixture of her original uniform and materials from the jungle. Her skin was tanned and scarred. Her eyes were sharp and calculating. She held a spear made from bones and metal, and she moved like a predator, herself. You came here to kill me, Ji-woo said. Her voice was calm. Matter of fact, Kethra raised his weapon, but he knew it was useless. He was surrounded. He could see shapes moving in the jungle around them. Kovans. Vorash. Things he could not identify. The council sent us. I know. Ji-woo walked closer. Did they tell you why I was sent here? You were convicted of war crimes. I defended my people from attackers. Ji-woo corrected. The council called it a crime because I did not let the Valth Empire do whatever they wanted. So they sent me here to die. To make an example. Kethra said nothing. He was a mercenary. He did not care about politics. You have a choice, Ji-woo continued. You can keep trying to kill me, and you will die on this planet. Or you can leave and tell the council the truth. What truth? That I survived. That a human survived on Kratos 7, not just for days, but for months. That I am thriving here. She gestured to the jungle around them. This is what humans do. We survive. We adapt. We win. Kethra looked at her. At the pack of deadly predators that obeyed her. At the territory she had claimed. He had fought in wars across the galaxy. He had seen many things, but he had never seen anything like this. They will just send someone else, he said. Then I will deal with them too. Jiwoo smiled. Or maybe by then, the whole galaxy will know what happened here. Maybe other humans will hear about what I did. What do you think happens then? Kethra understood. She was not just asking him to leave. She was asking him to spread the word, to become part of her message. Why would I do that? He asked. Because you are a survivor too, Jiwoo said. You know the council lied. They sent you here to commit murder and call it justice. You know that story ends badly for people like us. Kethra was silent for a long moment. Then he lowered his weapon. My team? Wounded but alive. Take them and go. Kethra nodded slowly. He activated his communicator and called for his scattered team to return to the ship. As they limped back through the jungle, Jiwoo's pack watched, but did not attack. Before Kethra boarded his ship, he turned back to Jiwoo. I know, she said. But neither will I. The mercenary ship left Kratos 7. Kethra sat in the pilot seat, staring at the data he had recorded. Video of Jiwoo, commanding her pack. Scans showing her thriving territory. Proof that everything the council had said was a lie. He thought about deleting it. About following orders. But Jiwoo had been right. This story would not stay quiet. The truth had a way of spreading. He sent the data to the council as ordered. But he also sent copies to several journalists he knew. People who would ask questions. Within days, the footage was everywhere. Human colonies across the galaxy watched videos of Jiwoo standing alongside creatures that could tear apart starships. They saw her territory, her pack, her kingdom. Captain Taehyun saw the footage in his office and immediately began organizing. He called in every favor he had. He contacted human representatives in the council. He made noise. Loud noise. They tried to kill her. He told anyone who would listen. They exiled her to a Deathworld. And when she survived, they sent mercenaries. This is what the council thinks of humans. This is how they treat us. The response was immediate. Human colonies threatened to leave the council. Trade agreements were frozen. Military units refused council orders. The political pressure became enormous. Ambassador Vexislar tried to bury the story, but it was too late. The other council members turned on him. He had acted without full approval. He had used council resources for what was clearly a political hit. Within a month, Vexilar was removed from his position. The council, desperate to avoid a full rebellion, authorized a rescue mission for Jiwoo. Captain Taehyun led the mission personally. When his ship entered orbit around Kratos 7, he felt a mixture of hope and fear. He had seen the videos, but seeing them and knowing Jiwoo was safe were different things. His team landed near her territory. They came armed but not aggressive. They broadcast messages announcing their peaceful intentions. Jiwoo appeared at the edge of the jungle. Behind her, the three covens stood like living mountains. Vorash prowled at the flanks. Her pack was ready for anything. Taehyun stepped forward, hands raised and empty. Jiwoo, it is me, Taehyun. For a moment, she just looked at him. Then her serious expression broke into a smile. Captain, you look older. You look terrifying, he replied honestly. They talked for hours. Taehyun explained everything that had happened. The political chaos, the pressure on the council, the offer to bring her home. Home. Jiwoo repeated the word like it was strange. She looked back at her territory, at her pack, at the jungle that had tried to kill her and had instead become her kingdom. This is home now. You do not have to stay, Taehyun said gently. You are free. You can come back to human space. I will come back, Jiwoo said. But on my terms. They negotiated for days. In the end, Ji-woo agreed to return, but with conditions. Kratos 7 would be declared a human protectorate. The council would formally apologize, and Ji-woo would serve as an ambassador, representing humanity's interests, but she would also return to Kratos 7 regularly. This planet, this pack, this life she had built, it was part of her now. When Ji-woo finally boarded the ship to return to council space, she brought one of her covens with her. The massive creature barely fit in the cargo hold, but its presence was intentional. A reminder, a message. Weeks later, Ji-woo stood before the Galactic Council for the second time. But this time, everything was different. She wore new clothes, a mixture of military uniform and materials from Kratos 7. She stood tall and confident. Behind the council chambers, her kovan waited in the ship, and its deep rumbling could be heard through the walls. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The blue-skinned council leader spoke first. Ji-woo of Earth, we have reviewed the circumstances of your exile. The council extends its formal apology for the injustice done to you. Apology accepted, Ji-woo said simply. But we all know why I am really here. You tried to make me an example. You tried to show that humans were dangerous and needed to be controlled. Instead, you showed the galaxy what humans are capable of. And what is that? The council leader asked. Ji-woo smiled. Survival. On your worst Deathworld. In your worst conditions. You dropped me on a planet designed to kill, and I made it bow. Remember that the next time you think about what humans can or cannot do. Silence filled the chamber. Then, from the back, Captain Tae-hyun began clapping. Other humans in the observation areas joined him. The sound echoed through the massive room. The council had tried to exile humanity's nature. Instead, they had awakened it, and the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. Ji-woo left the chamber with her head high. She had survived the trial. She had survived the Deathworld. And now, she would make sure that no human would ever face what she had faced. The legend of the Deathworld Queen had begun.